We're back here, whole 9 yards on a Thursday afternoon. Drew PN here with Brandon Krikorian. An hour and a half until the trade deadline's over. Already had some breaking news, but first, Brandon, how's it going?
It's going good. Last couple days, so nothing much on my end. How about you?
Nothing really. Just trade deadline stuff. March Madness resumes in a couple days, which is going to be exciting. Looking forward to that. Also, a little bit of technical difficulties as far as the cameras, so we're working with split screen for today, so enjoy it. But trade deadline stuff, we've already had a solid amount of people get traded. Biggest name for sure is Vucevic, as well as just the Magic in general have dealt basically everybody, but we'll start with Vucevic. The trade was Vucevic to the Bulls for Carter and 2 firsts. I think this one, I think they're both top 4 protected. I could be wrong.
Yeah, the total trade is Vucevic, so Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu, who was on the Magic, for Otto Porter, Wendell Carter Jr., and 2 first-round picks. Obviously, it's really just Vucevic for Carter and 2 first-round picks, but the first-round picks are the Bulls are sending the Magic their 2021 and 2023 first-round picks. I'm not sure if they're protected or not, but they might be. But, yeah, this was – we've been talking about Vucevic possibly getting traded, it seems like, for a couple weeks, and I wouldn't think the Bulls would be the team that would trade for him. We talked about a couple teams, like maybe if the Celtics thought they still had a chance this season, like maybe they try to get Vucevic. Maybe some other couple teams that were, contenders, but if you get a guy like Vucevic, who's a solid center, it could turn you into a real contender. But I didn't really see the Bulls getting him. It seemed like, I know Woj tweeted about it. The front office wanted a serious-minded veteran player to go along with Zach LaVine. And, Vucevic is that type of guy. He's going to give you probably 22 at least. 22 to 25 with like 10 rebounds, and he's a pretty good outside shooter. We've talked about him before. So I don't know exactly how I feel about the Bulls side of this. I think they're not a team that is playoff ready yet. I don't think LaVine is like a true number 1 option. He's always been like a good stats, bad team guy, so maybe that changes with getting Vucevic. I still don't know if the rest of their team is ready, but if they think they have a chance, I like teams at least going for it. Even if they really don't have a true chance of at least getting past multiple rounds in the playoffs, at least going for it, I don't mind that. So I can't really fault them for this trade. If they think that they're ready, at least somewhat ready, then I think it's a good trade if they think that they're that ready.
I'm not a fan of the trade. I'm not really high on Vucevic as a player. I think he's a great player. I think he's one of those guys that every single year he's at least in contention to be an all-star, at least in the East. Probably not in the West, but in the East for sure. Every single year he's going to be in contention to get an all-star. But I think the reality is that's what he is as a player. Is we know what he is, but we know what he isn't. Every year he's going to be in contention to be a reserve. He's probably never going to be a starter in his career. Is he even a top 5 center? Maybe, but
if he was on a good team, maybe
he's a top 5 center, but is he on that tier that is shared by Jokic and Embiid? Definitely not. Is he close to that tier? No. Can he be a top 3 player on a championship winning team? No.
He could maybe be a third.
Maybe a third,
Depends
but
on who your first 2 guys are.
Your first probably has to be LeBron or Durant, I would assume. Maybe Kawhi. I think 2 first-round picks. The pick this year is top 4 protected, and the pick in 2023 is lightly protected. So I'm not exactly sure what that means, but I guess maybe we'll find out later.
It's probably lottery protected.
I don't think it'd be. That's a pretty big protection.
Then maybe like top 10 protected, something like that.
I would assume it's something like that, but I think 2 first-round picks is a lot just because. The Bulls are not guaranteed to make the playoffs even after making this trade. Would I bet on them making the playoffs? Yes, I would bet on them making the playoffs. Is it a guarantee? No. Would I be surprised if they didn't? No, they're the 10 seed right now, I want to say. I don't like the trade. Are you going to win the NBA championship with LaVine and Vucevic? And no, and I don't think the Bulls are expecting that either. But what would you have to add to this team from here on out to win a championship? You'd either have to get a diamond in the rough in the draft, which you've traded 2 first-round picks, so it's only going to be harder to do. And even if you do this, there's no guarantee you're winning it. I don't know what exactly you would have to do to get to a championship caliber team. Because right now I think you're a team that, maybe not this year, but going forward, assuming the roster stays somewhat the same and you're not adding, like a top 5 player, you're a team that might be able to get like a 4 seed in the East, maybe. You'd have to get really hot. You'd have to have a really great season, though. And you're not beating the Nets. You're not beating the Bucks. You're not beating the Sixers. I still think the Celtics are a better team than you talent-wise going forward. I still think the Heat are a better team talent-wise, and who knows, they may even add a Lowry or something. But, yeah, I don't like the trade. I think Carter 2 firsts is a lot. And I'm not saying I'm super high on Wendell Carter. I mean, at this point, we kind of know what he might be too, but I just don't see it. It just doesn't make sense. I think Vucevic would make more sense for maybe even a Celtics, but probably not even a Celtics in my mind. It would probably have to be a team that that adding Vucevic makes you a championship. That's the difference between, losing in the conference championship versus actually winning the finals, and I don't think the Bulls are even close to that.
Yeah, but I also don't think they're really expecting that. I think different teams have different expectations, and obviously like the Bucks, Sixers, Nets are championship, and I guess you could maybe throw the Heat in there if they get like a Lowry, I would say, but there's teams that are just looking to make the playoffs, and the Bulls have been bad for, obviously you're the D-Rose years for a couple years, but if you look at the last 20 years, ever since really MJ retired, they've really haven't done much. And again, do I think this move can take him to an Eastern Conference championship in the next 2-3 years? Probably not, unless you're right. Unless like Colby Lewis turns into a really good player, or they draft someone else that turns into a really good player. They're probably not going to make it past the second round, if anything, in the playoffs over the next couple of years. But I don't fault them for at least going for it. And the offer for the Magic, looking at the Magic side, was there a better offer than Carter and 2 firsts? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what teams were in on Vucevic, like the real teams that were actually in on him. But, you get a guy in Carter who, with the Bulls, it just didn't work out. He has the talent, but he's been injury prone, and it just seems like he doesn't attack the basket. Like some guys they have the gifts to score like 15 to 17 points a game, but they just don't for some reason.
Let's be honest.
Weird,
if there's one place you wouldn't want Wendell Carter to go, it's probably Orlando. It's the one place that it seems like big men, high picks that are big men from the draft just go to die. It's like the Timberwolves, but specifically big men. Mo Bamba.
Yeah, except for Dwight Howard and Shaq.
As of recent, Mo Bamba,
yeah.
I don't know if you count Jonathan Isaac, but he's clearly been injury prone. He's out for who knows how long, and if he'll even be the same, but yeah.
But, overall, this trade, I just can't. And I know I've said it, but I can't fault the Bulls for at least trying. And, there's a lot of teams that just wouldn't even try to do anything. At least they're trying to make the playoffs. At least they're trying to do something. And in the East, I know they won't obviously win a championship. I'm not expecting that, but at least they can do something in the East. It's easier than it is in the West.
I'm just trying to think because, and I understand from an ownership perspective why you would make this trade. And again, I don't know that I can necessarily fault the Bulls either, but from my perspective. And I'm here just to win championships. So if I'm the GM, I'm not doing it. I don't think it makes me a championship team. But I'm not saying that one trade has to make me a championship team. But I don't even see the path that the Bulls can take with the Levine and Vucevic core to get to a championship. Well, I just don't see it.
I think realistically, they probably don't see that path. But not every team has a path to a championship. Some teams are just meant to just get to the playoffs and then lose first or second round every single year and maybe get to a conference finals. That's just the path of some teams. And like if you're the GM of that team, obviously you want to win a championship, but with the players you have, with the picks you have, with what's going on in the league, what market you're in, it's just hard to be able to always get to a championship level contender. And I think for the Bulls and where they are right now, having missed the playoffs the last, 5 years or something like that, but really not having a shot for almost 10 years, I think it's something. I don't know if they had to do it, but I feel like it's something they almost had to do, just to at least have some energy in the Bulls organization and for their fans. I feel like they just had to do it.
Again, as far as being respectable, getting back to a respectable level, I guess, but I'm not here for that.
Well,
I'm here to win championships. I mean, that's easier said than done from somebody sitting on the sidelines, but still, I'm not a big fan of the trade. For the Magic, the Magic perspective, I think if it's the best you can get, it's the best you can get. Worth doing. I mean, we've seen with stars, and I don't know if Vucevic is a star, but we've seen with just players in general, the longer you hold on to them, the less value they're going to get. If they wanted to trade Vucevic next deadline, you can take away a first-round pick probably, at least. Maybe take away Carter, but you get less. You're definitely getting less. The Bulls have control. I think they've got 2 more years under his contract. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good trade for Orlando. I mean, they're clearly blowing it up. I mean, they traded Aaron Gordon as well, if you want to get into that. They traded him to the Nuggets. I forget the exact details of the trade. I think it was Hampton.
It was Hampton, Gary Harris, and a first-round pick for Aaron Gordon. And for Vucevic, just quickly, he's going to be a free agent in 2023. So, yeah, he is this year and then 2 more years, and then he's a free agent. So, which will be the rest of his prime. So, I mean, that's kind of what they were banking on, I guess. But, yeah, Aaron Gordon.
So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think it's a good... We'll talk about from the Nuggets' perspective first.
Yeah, well, let me start with Aaron Gordon. I mean, he requested a trade, I think it was a couple days ago. And, I mean, he's always someone who's been, like, a guy who's always been available around the deadline, it seems like the last 3 years. And this was finally the year that he did get traded. From the Nuggets side, they've had a struggle with depth. They lost a lot of guys off their bench from last season into this season. Murray hasn't stepped up in the way that people thought he was coming out of the bubble. Porter hasn't stepped up the way he has. I know he had COVID, or he had some issue with that. He missed a lot of games, but he hasn't been the player that you were at least hoping for that he'd be this season. So to get someone like Gordon, he's pretty good. He's probably your 3rd or 4th best player. I mean, on the Nuggets, he'll be your 3rd or 4th best player, but on most teams, he'd be that. He can give you 15, probably 8 rebounds. He can shoot pretty well. We'll have to see if that can actually translate into on the Nuggets, but he's been shooting it pretty well this season. He's all right. I'm not going to call him a difference maker. He's nothing like that, but he's a good add to a team that has finals aspirations. And the Nuggets, where they are right now, can they make the finals? Maybe with the injuries that are happening in the West, but if they're going to make the finals, he's going to have to play a really important role. He's going to have to be really good, which, I don't know if I would bank on that from Aaron Gordon.
I think the Nuggets needed another star to really get to that level.
Star.
Well, I mean, and I'm saying Gordon is not that.
Okay.
Gordon's definitely not that.
He's
not the star. No.
Yeah.
I think you needed a Beal. Not that you were going to get Beal on the deadline, but I think you need a Beal type of player. I think Lowry, it wouldn't be Lowry, but you need somebody of that caliber. Gordon is a tier below that. He's probably 2 tiers below Beal, and he's probably a tier below somebody like Lowry. I just don't see that it makes that big of a difference. And now you're not giving that much up. I mean, you're giving up Gary Harris, who I think he's kind of just lost it. Hampton, he's last year's first-round pick. And then you're giving up a protected 2025 first-round pick. So
which means nothing.
Is probably going to be nothing. So you're not really giving much up, which, I mean, so I can't hate on it too much. But, I mean, in terms of getting to the finals, it's just not going to happen. I don't think this makes a difference between you getting to the finals and not. Now, if you get lucky with maybe the Clippers get injured and the Lakers just never rebound off of AD and LeBron both being hurt right now, maybe you can get lucky and get to the finals, but you're not going to win that series, I don't think. I still think you need another piece.
Yeah, and them losing, I would say the biggest loss in this trade was probably Harris, only because he's probably their best defensive player, which they're going to need Gordon to do, is to at least play some defense. But you're right, they didn't really give up that much in this trade. So to get a guy like Aaron Gordon, which at his potential, or at his ceiling, I should say, is a pretty good player. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago he had one of his best seasons of his career, and he's been in the league since 2014. He's actually been in the league a pretty long time, but he's just, I would say he's just an average player. He's a guy who is just going to give you 15 a night. You may notice him, you may not. You probably lose him for long stretches of the game. But he's at least a body, someone who can score the basket or score the ball. And if he can play somewhat defense, then it would really work out. But again, I don't see this. I don't see this getting them to a finals, and if anything, winning a finals. They're going to need a lot of stuff from Gordon, from the West, and just other factors to go in their favor.
I would agree. And as far as the Magic perspective, if it's the best you could get, it's the best you could get. I mean, he requested a trade. It was time. I mean, if you're trading Fournier and Vucevic, you might as well trade Gordon as well. If it's the best you get, it's the best you get. If not, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't take. I'm curious what the Celtics offered because, I mean, and we'll talk about this shortly, but they traded for Fournier, and it seems like the Nuggets may have chosen this over somebody like Smart. I don't know how you feel about that. I'm not sure if Ainge is overvaluing Smart. Maybe Ainge didn't want to give Smart up in a deal for Gordon, or sorry, for Gordon and Fournier.
I would say, let me ask you: would you give up Smart for Gordon? Obviously, there'd be other pieces, but would you be?
It would
willing
probably
to
have
trade
to
that?
be.
Does Aaron Gordon make a huge difference on the Celtics team for this year and next year, or however long his contract is, for them to at least get a better step?
I think the Celtics had to make a trade, and honestly, I would not be mad if the Celtics traded Smart. It doesn't seem like they're going to now, but if they had, I would not have been mad. I'm not sure that Gordon's the move, or Gordon and Fournier is the move. Fournier is just a rental player, but you had to change something. I think bringing in Fournier is good. I would have liked to see you bring in another player. Maybe it's Gordon. Maybe it's somebody else. It's just not working. I just think you have to retool. Obviously, you're not trading Tatum or Brown. Whether it's Smart, I mean, I don't know if Kemba's even tradable. I don't think he really is. But you have to do something. I probably would have done it. I don't know if Ainge tried to and they wanted other stuff, or if Ainge didn't want to do that. If Ainge didn't want to do that, I think the Celtics are just severely overrating Marcus Smart's value. And honestly, I think he should have been traded a while ago, because he's only losing value as we go on. He's basically just shooting his way out of value. I mean, the more shots he takes, the more threes he takes, the less value he gets day by day. And it's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, and they only had to give up 2 second-round picks for Evan Fournier, and I was just looking. It seems like they may delay it for a bigger deal, but at least for right now, it's just 2 second-round picks for Fournier. And also, if you were right in that he is going to be a free agent next season, so it is a rental. But if they don't re-sign him, they do get a sizable trade player exception from the trade, which obviously they have one from this year from the Hayward. So they could use that also next year, whether it's a Beal trade or signing someone or anything like that. They could use that in that also. So I think this works out. Look, is Evan Fournier going to make this team click chemistry-wise and have them, assuming they don't make any other trades, and he's going to be some more of a reason than before if they didn't have him, so this team could make an Eastern Conference Finals? Probably not. I don't think this team is getting past the second round unless Tatum and Brown or just this team just completely comes together, which I don't think is going to happen. So, is this? I think they were right in not trying to do too much, because I don't think there was a guy out there on the market that could change this team so much where they'd get to an Eastern Conference Finals or possibly a Finals appearance. So I think getting a guy like Evan Fournier, who is a better addition than anything you had. I mean, clearly Nesmith wasn't the guy that you thought he was at all in the draft, and Fournier is just a better version, experienced version of that. So I can't blame him for this trade. It's nothing too crazy that's going to mess you up in the future, and it's nothing too light to the point where you didn't do anything for this season.
Yeah, I think you had to make more changes, because I'm not sure, and I don't know if anybody knows what it is that's not, that why the Celtics team isn't clicking like it has before. I mean, we've seen with less talent the Celtics team just be much better, and I'm just not sure what it is. And I think we're nearing to the point where you have to look at Brad Stevens, and maybe obviously there was the Indiana rumors. He kind of denied those, but is his message lost in the locker room? Is he out? I'm just not. I don't know. I don't know if we're ever gonna know, but something has to change. If Fournier is that awesome, if not, oh well. You didn't have to give up much, and I think the Fournier trade is in itself is a good trade. If it was that or nothing, I would do that if I'm the Celtics. And if I'm Orlando, I mean, is it even worth to trade Fournier for 2 second-round picks? I mean, I guess you might as well, but
I mean, expiring contract. It seemed they're clearly going into a rebuild, so I guess why not?
yeah, I'm surprised that that's all you had to give up. I mean, would you rather have 2 second-round picks, or would you rather have a second in Neesmith or a second in like a Romeo Langford?
I mean, I'd like to have a younger player to come along in that trade. I just don't know if the Celtics were willing to give someone up like that. I mean, again, it's an expiring contract, so it's hard to give up a guy that you just drafted in the first round.
This is what worries me is that, and I mean, we've seen it throughout Ainge's GM careers, that he just overvalues like random stuff. Like, he should not be overvaluing Neesmith. He should not be overvaluing Langford. He should not be overvaluing any of these first-round picks. He shouldn't be overvaluing Smart, which I'm pretty sure he's probably doing right now, and he's definitely done it in the past. I think he's scared to make moves, and I think he wants to win every trade, which of course he won every trade, but I think he's only willing to make deals when he knows that like there's no way he can lose this trade. And I don't know if it's the Perkins trade a while ago that's made him into this shell of himself, but
the only thing I'll say is that holding on to these guys like a Neesmith, Langford, Smart, is they're going to do something in the offseason. They just have to. This team right now, as it's currently constructed, isn't working, so they're going to do something in the offseason. So I would say he's holding on to those guys. I don't know if he's overvaluing Smart. I think he's just not trying to give him up for something to help this season when he could possibly give him up for something to help next season and even the seasons after that. So I would say whatever happens this offseason, Smart, Neesmith, Langford, first-round picks, they're all going to be involved. So I would say he's just holding on to that because I think he knows, I think people in the Celtics organization know the team as it is right now is not going to win anything. So what's the point in trying to sacrifice our future for the present when we're not close? So I would say that's what his thinking is.
I would hope. And if you go into next season with Smart, Neesmith, Langford, and all your picks, I would be disappointed, and I think that's when you have to start thinking about firing Ainge.
Are you talking about going into next season? Or the year after?
What going into next season. Like, if next season you still have Neesmith.
Like the start of next season. Yeah. I would say, I mean, I don't know if they'd fire him or not, but if they go into next season, the first game of the next season, if they still have, those people and they didn't add anyone big or anything like that, that's definitely a failure on the front office's fault.
Yeah. I mean, other trades. I mean, Norman Powell was traded from Toronto to Portland for Gary Trent and Rodney Hood.
I mean, this, I would say, this is an addition for Portland, a team that has overperformed, I'd say, with the amount of injuries that they've had. Norman Powell's been a pretty good player these last 2 years. He's averaging basically 20 points a game this season. He's most likely going to come off the bench for Portland, and he's a really good six-man. So, to give up Trent, who's been good the last season and a half, I'd say, still young, and then Rodney Hood, I think he was a one-year deal, So I think it's worth it for Portland. Now, where do you have Portland going in your Western Conference? I don't have them going that far, but they think that they have a shot with the healthy McCollum, Nurkic, and then obviously Lillard adding Powell. It's a pretty good top four, I'd say. So I don't know where you have them going in your Western Conference, but for them, I think it's something that they probably had to do.
I don't hate the trade. I don't think giving up Gary Trent and Rodney Hood is really that much for Powell. But, I mean, does it make them any better? Does it move them up a tier in terms of, like, the power rankings? No, it doesn't. They're not better than the Nuggets. They're not better than the Clippers. They're not better than the Lakers. I mean, could they beat the Nuggets in a series? Maybe. I think they'd have to get pretty lucky. I think they're kind of around that level. But in my opinion, it doesn't make them better than the Lakers or the Clippers, and I don't think they're close. I still think they need another piece. I don't know exactly what it would be, but yeah. I think as far as the regular season is concerned, right now they're the 6th seed, and I mean the standings are pretty close. You'd ideally like to get into that upper echelon of seeding so you can have – you'd rather play the Mavs, the Spurs, the Grizz, the Warriors, the Pelicans. You'd rather play those teams than have to go – on the road the first 2 games against the Clippers, or which would be the current matchup right now. You'd be going to the Staples Center to play the Clippers. I mean, you'd clearly rather play the Spurs in the first round than Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers. So as far as that's concerned, if Powell helps them get higher seeding, then I mean that's great. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be beating the Lakers or the Clippers really.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I don't have them beating Clippers, Lakers, obviously healthy. And then if you were to look at the next tier, like Jazz, Nuggets,
Would you put,
maybe.
I mean, are you putting the Suns in that tier? Or no, no.
Oh yeah, the Suns also. Yeah, I would put the Suns in that. I would say those four teams are that second tier of teams that maybe if they get hot or maybe if there's an injury, though they definitely could reach the finals. But I don't even know if they were to play the Suns, Jazz, or Nuggets, it'd be a close series. I'd say it'd probably go 7 games most likely, and I'd say maybe half and half. They'd probably split, or maybe it'd go if it's the Nuggets, maybe it's 6-4 or something like that. So maybe they can get to a Western Conference Finals if they wouldn't have to face the Clippers or Lakers. But I would say that's the most,
Yeah.
even if that. So
I would agree. I would definitely agree.
yeah, so it's
And
I mean,
they're better than the Mavs and the Warriors. But I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to the Warriors in a series, and it doesn't look like they're going to face each other in the first round. But if they were to face each other, I wouldn't be surprised if the Warriors beat the Blazers.
and the Mavs have been getting a lot better recently. I mean, they started off really slow. I mean, Porzingis was, coming off the injury and the surgery. He still hasn't been 100%. I think he had 30 points last night. Obviously, you have Luka, who started off slow. He clearly wasn't in shape coming into the season, but now he is. So they're a team that's improving. They could possibly be on that tier when season comes to end, but that's also another team to look out for. I don't know if they'll do anything in the trade market or anything like that, but when it comes to the end of the season, that's another team that Portland's most likely going to have to fight for position or face them in a series. And that'd also be a really close series because Luka's the best player on the floor, and then I guess Lillard, maybe, I don't know where you have Porzingis, McCollum, Nurkic, but it would be a really close series. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Other moves, George Hill to the 76ers. I mean, I guess that's probably why they're out of the Lowry race, like you said.
Because there was a report that they're out of Lowry because of this trade.
Yeah. I mean, clearly Hill is nowhere close to Lowry, but I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the Raptors are looking for Lowry. I guess we'll find out. I would assume. I mean, there's only 57 minutes left of the trade deadline.
Yeah.
I would be surprised if Lowry doesn't get dealt, though, and we might not even find out till a little bit after 3. Just kind of how those trades work sometimes, but yeah, I would be borderline shocked if Lowry's on the Raptors after the deadline.
Especially after last night. I mean, they had a game last night, and it, he's kind of waving to the crowd and stuff like that. It almost seemed like he knew he was going to get traded. Now, I would say Philadelphia, like that report said, I don't know what the Raptors are looking for. It seemed like they wanted a lot for Lowry, which I don't know how they're asking for that much for a guy. He's still good, but he's 35. He rather has 1 year on his contract, or I think this is his last year on his contract too. Maybe his 1 year after, but I don't know what they're looking for and how much teams are willing to give up. Because I feel like the Sixers, that was a perfect fit for them, and I feel like the Raptors probably wanted Maxey, Thibault, and in a first round pick, which I think that's too much. I don't think you can throw Maxey in there. Maybe like Thibault, another player, and then like a first round pick, maybe a second round pick, something like that.
It'd be probably the opposite. I think the 76ers would be more willing to give up Maxey than Thibault, but
well, I think Maxey's. I mean, Thibault's good defensively, but he can't shoot, and there's nothing much else he can do. And I feel like that team's a really good defensive team, anyways. And Maxey, I think he was a pretty good pick at where they were in the draft. I feel like you'd give Maxey up for a better player than Lowry, part of like a bigger deal. I mean, I'm not saying that would happen in this market, but I'm saying in future markets or if there was a bigger player out there. So I feel like that was what the Raptors were looking for. I feel like I remember seeing that. So I guess the Sixers just said, we're not going to go that high. We'll get George Hill, who he's been on a couple teams. He was obviously on that Cavs team in 2018. He was on the Bucks 2019 team. He was also on like a Jazz team that was pretty good a couple years ago. So he's like a filler guy. He can shoot like 40% from 3. He's a veteran. He's not going to make mistakes. I think it was the safer option than going all out for Lowry, I would say.
It's the safer option, but I mean, I would assume Masai Ujiri's argument to the Sixers was, listen, Lowry this year should be the difference between you winning the finals and not. you should be willing to give up Thibault, Maxey, a first, and maybe that's it, or maybe throw in another pick. You should be willing to give up that in order to get a player like Lowry to win the finals this year. And the Sixers probably said no. I mean, clearly they did. So, it's would Lowry have been the difference between winning the finals and not? I'm not too sure, but I don't think George Hill is going to make a big enough impact. I'm not going to look back on the season if the 76ers win or lose, and I'm almost positive I'm not going to say this George Hill trade was huge for the Sixers. I don't think he's going to have a big enough impact. Even if he plays well, I don't think that's going to happen. With Lowry, I think you could easily come back after the season and say he was the difference between you getting to the finals and not. So, yeah, I don't know.
But in your opinion, do you think Lowry, Simmons, and Embiid, let's say they had to give up Maxey and Thibault. So it's basically Lowry, Simmons, and Embiid, and obviously like Tobias Harris. Do you think that team could beat the Nets in the East, and then if they were to get to the finals, beat a healthy Lakers team, let's say? Do you think Lowry is enough for them to win the championship with the risk of giving up a Maxey?
You probably have no shot. You have to get super, super lucky to win the finals without trading for Lowry. With Lowry, I think you only have to get slightly lucky. Because are you going to beat a fully healthy Nets team? Probably not, but I still give you a chance in that series. I still definitely give you at least a chance. And, I mean, Kyrie and Durant are probably the two of the most unpredictable players, whether it be injury-wise or just, mentally, especially Kyrie. There's a genuine chance Kyrie could just miss a playoff game because he doesn't feel like playing. I'm not even kidding.
It could happen, you're right. It could happen.
So, due to the unpredictability of the Nets and the Lakers, who even knows? You might not even face them in the finals. If we're saying they're healthy, yeah, I give you a chance in that series if you have Lowry. Without Lowry, I don't know that I do. I don't think I would.
So if you're Daryl Morey, you would have traded Lowry if you had to give up Maxey, Thibault, and a pick, let's say. You would have done that trade. Like you at least would have done a trade that would have gotten you Lowry.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Obviously it depends on who you're giving up, but I don't know. I don't know if I would have. I feel Hill's definitely the safer option. He's not as impactful as Lowry would have been, but I feel like this team, I just don't know if this team could beat a healthy Nets team even with Lowry. Maybe they could, obviously, if they're playing 10 times, obviously they'd have a chance in 10 different series, but I think this Nets team, they're not even fully healthy right now, and they're I think they're what, first in the East, or the Sixers are still first in the East, but the Nets have had like the best record since they've gotten like Harden, I think it is. Maybe the Jazz probably had the best record, but you know what I'm saying. So when Durant comes back fully healthy, Kyrie's straight, and obviously Harden's Harden. That's just a hard team to beat in a 7-game series, no matter, even if you have Lowry, don't have Lowry. And obviously Embiid's injured right now, so we don't even know what he's going to look like when he comes back. I'd assume he's still going to be MVP Embiid, but we don't know for sure.
You're kind of right. I would probably pick the Nets in that series, but having Lowry on your team gives you a hell of a lot better of a chance to win that series for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a deal you make. Because, we've already, how many more years are you giving Embiid Simmons?
Yeah, and it seems like it's working this year. Again, at least wins-wise, stats-wise, I guess you could say. We don't know about the chemistry part of it. It seems like it's fine, but I would say, it's interesting because you just got Doc Rivers. You're hoping that a coaching change would fix it, and it seems like it has. But if you get to the playoffs and you lose second round, or maybe you're non-competitive in the Eastern Conference Finals, what do you do? Embiid's clearly the better player. He's the more potential, clearly. But Simmons is a really valuable piece because of his. They're both really good defensively, but Simmons is probably the best perimeter defender in the league. Obviously, in being 6'10". He could guard 1 through 5 easily. Offensively, obviously, it's a struggle, but I don't know. I feel like even after this year, you may still give it another year. I don't know. It's a decision
you would give it another year probably, but it's just
it's like how many
you've given it
years?
So many years, and if you're not, I think at some point, whether it's this year or next, you're gonna have to go all out to just see what your potential is with this team, and if it's not there, it's not there. But let's just I'd say the most likely course is that the Sixers are either going to lose to the Bucks or the Nets. Most likely, you're going to lose to one of them. Most likely.
Yeah, most likely.
You're most likely also going to be relatively competitive. You're probably not going to get swept in that series, in either of those series.
No.
I mean, what would you? Without adding Lowry, I think most likely you're going to get to a point where it's like you're still unsure whether or not this team can win it all. Simmons and Embiid core can win it all. So, and ideally you'd like to find that out this year, but I don't know that you can unless, of course, with George Hill they manage to beat the Nets and make the finals. Then sure, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think having Lowry gives you a much better chance to do that. But yeah,
it's. Again, with them hiring Doc Rivers for this season, I'd say they definitely give it another year. At least have another year under their belt with Rivers. Clearly, something's working. Like I said, Embiid. If he didn't get injured, he probably would have been MVP. But
he may still be.
He may still be if he comes back. But it seems like that may have changed a little bit at least. But if they can come back next year with the same team basically, and they're still this successful. It's hard because the goal is to win a championship for this team, and it's been 5 years already, 4 years, something like that. So, and the guys are going to get older. Obviously, Embiid always has injury problems. Even though he was healthy last season, but obviously this season he has the knee injury. There's always a case he can always get injured. Simmons is more healthy at least, but still he can get injured too. It's just how much longer do you think this team has a chance or a window to win a championship? You'd think it's way more open than it is, but it's just really not. After the next season, they still haven't won one. They could completely blow it up and trade Simmons or trade Embiid. That's just how it goes. So I'd give it obviously this year. I'd give it next year, but after that, I think you really have to think about possibly doing something, whether it's trading for someone else or trading Simmons to get a better player, or just completely blowing it up. I feel like those thoughts will become real thoughts, after this next season.
Yeah. I'm just looking at Twitter trying to see, just looking for that breaking news. But, Toronto traded some random Matt Thomas to the Utah Jazz, future second-round pick, opens an additional roster spot to take on an additional player in the Lowry trade. Raptors still talking to teams within 45 minutes of the deadline, but nothing yet. I would assume the Raptors just take whatever is best. I don't think they keep him. It just doesn't make sense. It's time's done. Even if all you were able to get is just a first rounder, you would just do it. There's no reason not to. Other news though. Drummond, we still don't have a result on it. I would assume it looks like Drummond's just gonna have to be bought out. I don't think anybody's. It just doesn't look like.
The only thing I'll say about that is that he's on the Cavs. Dan Gilbert is their owner. Clearly, if he gets bought out, he's most likely gonna go to the Lakers, I would assume. And obviously, Dan Gilbert and LeBron don't like each other. That's been noted. So I feel like he just wouldn't want to buy him out just because of that reason, just to kind of spite LeBron in that. Now, maybe that's not true, but I feel like that's definitely somewhat of a reason as to why he wouldn't be bought out. But, who really wants to trade for Andre Drummond? Would you, do you really feel like giving something up? I know they wouldn't actually really give something up, but, just the money that you have to take on, the player that he is, can't play the last 4 minutes of a game. He's all right defensively. He's not great. There's only a certain amount of teams, probably like a handful of teams that really could use him. Not even really use him, but could just add him. I don't know. You have to wait till he gets bought out. And again, he may not even get bought out. So that's a weird situation.
According to he's a verified Sixers beat writer for Philly, some Philly place. He's also hosts a podcast. He's verified, 61,000 followers. He said the Raptors reportedly wanted Thibault, Maxey, and 2 draft picks. So we were pretty close.
Yeah.
Are you doing? I guess you wouldn't do that if you're the Sixers.
I just feel like that's too much. I just don't know. Lowry, again, he will be a free agent after this season. You'd have to resign him to a contract. He'd probably take less money. He's made a lot of money with the Raptors the last couple of seasons, but even if you were to do that, I just don't know if that's worth it. I just don't.
I mean, I guess it would depend on what those 2 draft picks are, but I don't even know if it would.
I'm not even really worried about the draft picks,
Yeah,
honestly.
I don't think I am either. If I'm the Sixers,
I mean, you said you
could
do
you
it,
still?
so
I think you could still get Lowry for less. Lowry still hasn't been dealt. It doesn't look like the Raptors are gonna get too much for him. I mean, you traded for Hill, so it doesn't look like you're not getting Lowry anymore. Could you have waited out just a little bit longer?
well, the Raptors may have just been stuck on we want Maxey, Thibault, and 2 picks, and they weren't going to go off that. So the Sixers said, well, if you're not going to move off that, we'll just trade for someone else.
No, I know. Could you have waited 30 minutes to get to 2:45 p.m. and the Raptors realized, all right, well, the most we're getting is a rotational man who has not much potential, unlike Thibault and Maxey, and a first. And then the Sixers call him back up and say, hey, I mean, you guys have gotten basically nothing. I know you're stuck on Thibault, Maxey, and 2 picks. We'll give you one of the 2 and 2 firsts or something like that, or 2 picks, but we're not giving you both. I still think there's a potential that gets it done. I mean, clearly you're not doing that anymore. You just traded for Hill. But, yeah, I mean, we'll see what Lowry gets dealt for, but...
Yeah, and it seems like I've seen 2 teams for his name. It seems like the Heat are probably the biggest team right now with the Sixers out. And I heard Lakers, but I don't think that happened. So I'd say probably the Heat if he gets traded.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see what they get. Like would they give up like a Duncan Robinson or a Tyler Hero? I would say probably not.
I think you could...
I don't know how valuable those players are, honestly. I don't really think they're that good, honestly, but... I don't know. Would you give those guys up, like one of those guys in a first-round pick?
I don't think I'd give up Hero, but I think I would give up. I'd give up Robinson. I mean, I think we know what Robinson is. I mean, yeah, he's young, but he's not that young, and he's not gonna get. I don't think he's gonna get better than what he is now. I mean, this is what he's gonna be for a while. A solid rotational player.
Yeah.
Shoots threes at. I mean, insane percentages, but
he doesn't
do anything else in that. He's garbage on the defensive side. I would give up Duncan Robinson in a first. Am I going to give up Hero? No, I'm not. Yeah. And I'm not a huge Hero guy. I mean, there are people that think that Tyler Hero is literally Jesus, and he's not. I mean, Hero's an overrated player.
He's somehow averaging 17 points a game, which I don't even know how he's doing that, but. Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's overrated. Is he a good player? I mean, yeah. He's a guy who can come off your bench and give you points, but he can't do anything. He's a better version of Duncan Robinson, where the shooting's basically the same. He has a little bit more playmaking skills, but they're both terrible defensively. So I don't really see true value in Hero, honestly.
Yeah.
And I just saw a report. The Knicks are engaged on trade talks for Lonzo Ball. And that's another name who could possibly get traded at the deadline. I would
expect it too.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I feel like he almost will. I think the teams on him for Knicks, Bulls, and Clippers. I'd want to say. I don't know what he'd get in a market. In the market, I don't know what you'd have to trade for Lonzo. So I'll be interested to see if he actually does get traded, what it would be. I know for his contract situation, he did. I think he'll be a restricted free agent at the end of this season. So whatever team trades for him, they're gonna have to. I guess you can do I guess you could do a qualifying offer. So maybe you could rather do a qualifying offer, or you could just be a restricted free agent. That's the same thing basically. You just have to sign him to bigger money. But yeah, I don't know what a team would have to give up for Lonzo Ball. I don't really know what that market would look like.
I mean, I would assume not very much.
Yeah, I mean. Like the Pelicans in return? I mean, they have Kyra Lewis, who they took in the first round this year, so we can kind of take that spot. Obviously, they still have Bledsoe; he'll be gone after the season. But I don't know. I don't know what a team would have to give up for
him. The Athletic is saying Lakers offering a package for Lowry, including Schroeder, and KCP, and I mean, it just says offering a package including Schroeder and KCP. And the Heat are offering a Duncan Robinson-led return.
Okay. So that's kind of what we were thinking.
The inclusions of Talen Horton-Tucker and Tyler Hero are the holdups. So
Yeah, I mean, from the Lakers side, do you think Schroeder? Who do you think is more valuable for that team? I mean, again, AD, LeBron healthy, Schroeder being your point guard, or Lowry being your point guard?
and I think Lowry is the better player, but is it a dramatic upgrade at this point? No. Is it a good upgrade long term? Definitely not. I mean, I would assume you just keep Schroeder, but I
Yeah,
don't know. It's a tough call. I mean, it's yeah, I don't know.
I mean, obviously Lowry is the more experienced in the playoffs. He's been in the finals. He's been to multiple playoff series. It's not like you need that on this Lakers team, but it would obviously help. I think he may fit the team better in that, Schroeder, he's kind of looking for his own shot more, I would say. He's more of a scorer than a playmaker, so that would probably work in favor of Lowry. But, and actually, I just got an alert that the Hawks and the Clippers are discussing a Rajon Rondo trade, so that would probably put the Clippers out of Lonzo. But just going back to Lowry for a second, I feel like it would probably fit better on the Lakers with Lowry, but I just don't know how much of an upgrade it is if you're going to trade Schroeder. So I don't know what they do with that.
I mean, could you potentially just, do the trade, right? Give up Tucker, KCP, Schroeder for Lowry. Then next offseason or this offseason or whatever, just re-sign Schroeder.
The only thing is he's going to command a good amount of money.
Yeah, but I was assuming that the Lakers were going to re-sign Schroeder. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know, but
Obviously you're paying Davis a good amount of money. LeBron, obviously he doesn't have like a long-term contract or anything like that, but would you pay Schroeder? I guess it kind of depends on what he's looking for. I'd assume he wants a good amount of money. He hasn't been paid, like a ton of money. He's obviously been paid a good amount of money, but not a ton. So I think it's more up to him. Now, I think they're both. I know Lowry's a free agent at the end of this season, and Schroeder
is as well.
He is as well. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. For next season, I mean, obviously you're thinking about this season championship, but next season, I don't know who they'd have as their point guard. Honestly, if they were to do the trade, not do the trade, sign someone, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not too sure either, honestly, but yeah.
I think
Oladipo.
Yeah, I was about to say
unrelated news, but Oladipo looks like he's not going to get traded.
He practiced with the Rockets today. I just saw that,
and it looks like he's scheduled to be on the road trip as well. So,
if he doesn't get traded, I'd be surprised. As soon as they flipped him for Levert, or they flipped Levert for Oladipo in the Harden trade, it almost seemed obvious that they were going to trade Oladipo at the trade deadline. Unless he played really good and they just really liked him, then they would have signed him. He's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. But it seemed like they were going to trade him as soon as that trade went down. And if he doesn't get traded, especially they lost 20 in a row. I know they won a couple nights ago, but then they lost last night. So you're not going anywhere with this team, obviously. I don't know. I feel like you can get value for Oladipo. Not a great value, but I think you get something. At least a pick, maybe a player, maybe a second round.
At this point, do you regret the Rockets making the trade for just the straight-up swap or no?
Well, not counting this Levert, kidney thing that he had, obviously, but Levert's the younger player. Does he have more potential than a healthy Oladipo? Because I still don't know if Oladipo is fully healthy from the quad injury that he had, I think a couple years ago. I don't know. If he's for this team, if their pick goes out of the top 4, then they lose it. So that's kind of the reason that they've been trying to tank, honestly, because they want, whether it's Cade, Cunningham, Evan Mobley, Kuminga, anyone like that. So I don't know. Levert would probably be better for the future, but I think they were probably looking to flip Oladipo for a pretty good value at the trade deadline, and it just didn't work out. So they may have made a mistake in doing that.
Yeah. All right, so the news is here. Oladipo to Miami. No details yet. I'm assuming that'll come within the next few minutes. Initial reactions for me, I'm not surprised the Rockets traded Oladipo. I feel like we knew it was coming. It would have been pretty surprising if he wasn't traded. I'm not exactly sure for what. That's what it's gonna come down to for me. Raptors keeping Kyle Lowry as well, just
Yeah.
broke as well. That's probably that's surprising. That's surprising. Um, but yeah, I mean, as far as Oladipo is concerned, it's a good move for Miami as long as they didn't give up too much. I mean, would you give up Hero?
No, I mean
No, I wouldn't
if they
either.
weren't willing to give Hero up for Lowry, then there's no way they were willing to do that for Oladipo.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I mean, this was we were just talking. We were waiting for stuff to happen. I mean, I was saying like the most surprising move would be keeping Oladipo if I was the Rockets, and we just saw that the Raptors are keeping Lowry. I wouldn't like that's not that surprising. It's surprising, but not as much as if the Rockets were to keep Oladipo. There was just no reason for them to keep him, and we don't know the package of what they got in return yet. But I would assume maybe Duncan Robinson. It's like a pick. I don't know. I don't even know what they'd give up for him, honestly, because it seemed like Duncan Robinson was the headliner in the Lowry deal. So I would just assume he's the guy to go for Oladipo, but I really have no clue. And I mean, we're looking at live time to see if we could find anything, but
Yeah, no, that is honestly crazy that the Raptors are keeping Lowry. But yeah, if it's just a Duncan Robinson-led package for Oladipo, I think I like the trade both ways. I mean, the Rockets weren't keeping Oladipo. That's fine. The Heat are clearly trying to contend. I think it's a fine trade. I don't think if it's just Robinson and a pick or something like that, that's just not too much to give up for Oladipo in my mind. I think that's a fine trade.
yeah. And what were you gonna say?
No, I wasn't gonna say that.
The Heat, they have Victor Oladipo. He's been all right with Houston. I think it's just the situation's been so bad that he probably isn't even that motivated to play, honestly. But him going to Miami, he's not gonna have to do as much as he had to do with like Indiana when he was their best player before Sabonis was, before Oladipo got injured. So him, Jimmy, Bam, obviously it's still gonna be those three. Let's assume Duncan Robinson goes. They still have Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Precious Joshua, a couple other role players. So, does this make the Heat a real contender in the East now? Maybe. I would say they're still below the top three in Miami. The Bucks, Nets, and Sixers. But, I think they're on the next level, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, if they can get just as hot as they did in the playoffs last year, then they definitely can. I mean, with Oladipo, if you can somehow manage to get, your prime Oladipo for this Heat team, and that would be pretty insane. And even with the prime Oladipo, are you going to beat the Nets? I mean, probably not. But the Nets are the Nets. I mean, they're not. They're pretty unpredictable right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if something weird happens to the Nets down the stretch. So I don't think it's a horrible trade. Keeping Lowry, I mean, if I'm the Raptors, I just don't understand it. I get, Lowry, Raptor for not necessarily for life, but, it's kind of a feel-good type of thing. But, I mean, I still think you take what you can get, whether it's with the Heat or the Lakers. I just still think you pull the trigger. Now, if it's a rental player for a rental player, I mean, okay. I mean, I guess I don't know, but yeah, I'm just surprised. I would assume. Oh, Rockets acquire Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 pick swap from Miami for Oladipo.
Yeah, that's nothing.
That is nothing. Yeah,
and obviously Oladipo's a rental. I mean, I'd be surprised if they were to sign him after this season. But for half a season of Oladipo, I think that's a really good trade for Miami.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, I think for Houston, if that's the best you're getting, I mean, wouldn't you rather just have LeVert?
Yeah, I mean, it does beg the question of, and we did talk about it earlier, where would you rather just kept LeVert, and you could have traded him if you wanted to. I don't know if they actually would have done that, but yeah, I think they tried to go with the higher play in getting Oladipo and trying to flip him at the deadline for something more valuable, and it just didn't work out. I mean, that's the only reasoning that you would have ever done that swap in the first place, right? So, I think they just tried to take a big swing and it just missed. I think that's really what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I respect the move, but it clearly just didn't work out. I mean, Lonzo staying in New Orleans as well.
Yeah.
Surprising to me still. I mean, I was anticipating Lonzo to get dealt this deadline. He doesn't. He pulled himself out of practice with basically what I'm just going to call a fake injury or maybe just a bruise or whatever. I mean, I'm just going to call it, I mean, it's whatever. It's Marquise Chris to the Spurs, whatever. Yeah. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised. I don't think Lonzo's a great fit in New Orleans. I mean, especially with just all the buzz. It feels like a trade, trading Lonzo. I feel like there's still teams that want him. Maybe the New Orleans Pelicans just wanted more than, clearly they probably wanted more than what teams were willing to give up. But, yeah, I mean, I'm surprised if I'm the Pelicans, I probably would have traded Lonzo. But
yeah, and I guess there was just no good package that was out there for them.
I'm just surprised because I felt like there was a lot of teams that kind of wanted or were interested in Lonzo. I mean, before the Clippers traded for Rondo, which we'll talk about in a second, but before the Clippers traded for Rondo, even the Celtics, there were teams that were.
I mean, Knicks, Bulls, they were in on it. So for him not to get traded, it's definitely surprising. It just seems like he's not. I mean, he's going to be a restricted free agent at the end of the season. I would assume they're going to pay him somewhat good money. I mean, some teams, they're going to have to match that offer sheet if they even want to keep him. So if they don't keep it, if the Pelicans don't want to match that offer sheet, and again, it could be because of the money side, but then why didn't you just trade him then if you're not going to match the offer sheet? So that was definitely surprising that they kept him, and I guess there was just no good package out there, which the Knicks, they probably have a couple of good pieces to give, and the Bulls, I don't know what they would have given, but I feel like maybe a trade could happen with those two teams.
I agree, but it seems like that's just going to be the trade deadline. I mean, I guess we'll talk about Rondo, but the Clippers got Rondo for Lou Williams, and maybe, I mean, that's basically it. I mean, to me, I don't know that it makes the Clippers all that much better. I think it makes them better. I mean, I think you needed somebody like Rondo. I mean, he was even rumored back in the offseason. I mean, I think it was expected that Tice to Chicago officially.
Official.
But what was I saying? I just lost my.
I mean, Rondo in the offseason.
Yeah,
Clippers.
I was expecting Rondo to go to the Clippers. I was surprised to see he went to the Hawks, but yeah, I mean, I think a trade like this was inevitable. That I didn't think Rondo was long term or anything a fit for the Hawks or anything, but yeah, I mean, I think the trade's good. I don't know, the Hawks, are they going to buy out Williams? Are they planning on keeping him for the rest of the season? I'm not too sure. Yeah. We'll see. I would expect him to get bought out. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I don't know. We'll see.
But yeah, I mean, that situation with Lou Williams and the Clippers just hasn't been working out this past season. And I think he's had like kind of his career low. Maybe not career low. He's been in the league a long time, but last like 10 years basically his lowest season, I guess, so far. So he definitely needed to get out of there. Getting Rondo, I think the Clippers are hoping that he can do what he did with the Lakers last season, where, I mean, he was honestly the Lakers' third best player in the playoffs last season. In the finals, he was, I mean, if he doesn't play like he did in the finals last year against an injured Heat team, they may lose that series. Just that's how good he was. So I think they're hoping they can get something like that. Maybe not exactly what happened last year, but just something. He's obviously going to be better defensively. You have Reggie Jackson as your point. You have Beverly, Jackson, and Rondo as your point guards. So you have two guys who can really play defense, and then one guy in Jackson who can, I guess, somewhat score, but you probably don't want him taking shots. So they upgrade their defense, and if he can give you anything in the playoffs, then I think that's a plus, and I think that's what they're banking on. And Lou Williams, if you look at his stats in the playoffs, he is probably the worst playoff performer of all time, and that's not an exaggeration. He's really that bad in the playoffs, so I think it's probably a good trade for the Clippers.
No, I think it is too. Well, I mean, I don't know about the Hawks, but I mean, we'll see, I guess.
And I guess the Tice trade, I guess it's official, but Daniel Tice to the Bulls for Mo Wagner, who just got traded to the Bulls.
I mean, if it's only that and that's the only reason, if the Celtics are genuinely just trading Tice for Wagner straight up and that's all they're interested in, nothing. It's not about financials. It's not about the cap. It's not about moves for the future. I think it's a horrible trade. I mean, Tice is he's just a better player than Wagner. Wagner's, No, he's not good. I mean,
Yeah, I mean Wagner, he's not great defensively, but he brings a lot of energy to your team. He's obviously not going to score. He's probably a similar shooter to Tice, honestly, but yeah, that trade that's definitely a weird trade. Only because I mean Tice, he's a free agent at the end of the season. I believe Wagner is a restricted free agent. I want to say he didn't have his 4th-year option picked up by the Wizards when he was still on the Wizards. So I do want to say he will be a restricted free agent. No, he'll be an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season also. So, for guys who are both going to be free agents at the end of the season, who would you rather have, Tice or Wagner? I mean, it has to be a money play. It almost has to. Wagner's only making $2 million, and I think Tice was making $5 million. So it has to be a money play. There's just no other reason for you to trade Tice when he is the better player, and they're both free agents at the end of the season.
so I mean, if it's a money play, I would expect something else to come out in the next 2 minutes. But
Yeah, maybe like a pick, something.
I don't know. It's surprising. I don't like it. Now, I did say earlier, I mean, the Celtics need to change something if it's adding Fournier and getting rid of Tice. I didn't think Tice was the guy you needed to get rid of. I think it'd be something more core, like a smart. Yeah, a smart. I mean, I think it'd be somebody like Smart that would go. But yeah, I don't know. I don't. If it's just this move alone and there's nothing else involving, there's no other reason to do this trade just for. I mean, if you're just doing Tice for Mo Wagner, it's just not a good trade. But
Yeah.
it's
But other than that, I guess the last thing is Andre Drummond is going to get a buyout from the Cavs, and he's most likely going to sign with the Lakers. I'd be surprised if he signs with anyone else. So I guess that's news for Lakers fans. He didn't get Lowry, but I guess he get Drummond, if that helps.
Drummond. I mean, you know what Drummond is, but
Yeah, I mean, he's when AD's back, when LeBron's back, it's not going to matter that much, but he'll be productive in obviously not counting the fourth quarter, he'll be productive. So I guess in that sense it works, but
yeah, but I mean that's it at least for now, probably for good for this episode. So appreciate everybody who actually stayed to the end of this time. If for some reason something crazy happens, we'll be back, but I'd assume not. So. Read the description, everything. TikTok. We got a TikTok now. But everything's there. Description. Yep. All right. We'll be back Friday at noon. Sorry. Not Friday at noon. Tuesday at noon.
Tuesday.